I want you to play a game with me, Ray.
I don't want to play a game.
Oh, please.
No.
I said play a game with me, Raymond.
Right.
Lovely. I want you to imagine a character. Your boss, Mickey Pearson.
You're too smart to be blackmailing us, Fletcher.
Sweet Mary Jane is my vice. Your poison, on the other hand, is and always has been the destroyer of worlds.
You're out of touch, and I would like you to consider an offer.
I am not for sale.
The plot begins to thicken. Now, I can't be specific about the heroes and zeros, but our protagonist is a hungry animal. There is a lot of money hanging in the balance. Our antagonist explodes on the scene like a millennial firework and has indirectly started a war.
I think you need to see this, boss.
What's one of my firearms? How do they find it?
I'm making inquiries.
His name is Fahak. We're spelled with a PH, so it sounds like Fahak.
Please!
All right, Fahak, Kanda Fahak.
Please!
Welcome back. You're cozying up with the Film Board from the next reel on rashpixel.fm. We spoil movies, and this month we're celebrating the Lunar New Year of the Rat with a Guy Ritchie movie about organized crime released in part by Miramax. I know that sounds like literally 20 years ago, but this is now 2020, and our January new release is The Gentleman, showing in a theater near you. I am so excited to talk about this movie and what it means to watch gangsters talk in graphically cryptic metaphors given today's climate. Is it still fantasy? Is it political reality? Which came first, the creativity or the experience? But before we get started, I would like you to do us a favor, though, because over time our show has been through a lot, and our audience out there knows a lot about it. I would like you to find out what's happening with the whole situation with the Next Reel's extended family of podcasts at thenextreel.com. There are fun ways to join us in our wide world of global conversation cousins there. So whatever you can do, it's very important you can do it if that's possible. Even though I'm not seriously turning the screws here, it still feels creepy and gross to me to talk this way.
No.
Read the transcripts. Okay. In all seriousness, the best way to support our shows is over at patreon.com/thenextreel so we can keep this stream flowing strong. Come on, team. Get in the game with us.
Yeah.
Super fun out here. Okay. Let's introduce our host tonight. A warm welcome to the lion in our jungle, Pete Mickey Wright.
You're a Oh, God. Sorry, the swearing is just so natural after seeing this movie, apparently. I'm so sorry.
And hopefully a more mild hello to his sturdy consigliere, Steve Ray Sarmento.
Well, I've got glasses on, and I'm going to speak slowly and quietly, and you're going to assume I know more than you do.
I love it. And don't forget the muscle of our gang, Tommy Bunny Handsome.
Oi, bruv, I think this is a bloody double bubble. All right. That's all I ever heard of this entire movie.
Double bubble. I love it.
Double bubble.
Great. Along with a lot of synonyms for pot. Y'all know me as JJ, and I'll be showing up as the sometimes awkward, potentially creepy storyteller for this one. I would normally be reluctant about that, but I think it really worked as a plot device in this movie. So let's jump right in to The Gentleman. Gentlemen, tell me your initial thoughts. Tommy, what'd you think of this one?
I think it's telling that the opening credits had images from the film you were about to watch dissolving into smoke.
Okay.
Because that's kind of what the film turned out to be for me. Like, I had a good enough time in the theater and during the show. By the time I got to my car, so much of it had evaporated.
Yeah.
It's just style. There's almost no substance. I had a great time, but it's a tough one to sort of really hang on to because it's gossamer thin.
Ooh, I like
wow.
that. And you may have just described Guy Ritchie's filmography.
Right.
Now, but I don't know that that's a negative. I think there were positives in that too. How about you, Steve? What did you think?
I had a good time with this one. I'm a Guy Ritchie fan. I saw, Lock, Stock in the theaters and was blown away with that. And then, Love Snatch. This one, it's in that world, but it just feels a little bit more accessible and mainstream, which I think takes some of the teeth out of it, but I still really enjoyed his world, his characters, and just had a good fun ride with this one.
That's cool. That's great. And I think that I think we're going to end up talking about Lock, Stock, and Snatch a little bit when we get into what's sort of meat of this film here. How about you, Pete? How did it hit you?
Yeah, I feel like I'm right with you guys. I had a really good time with so many different elements. And, as we pull apart each of the individual performances, I think there was a lot to like in them. And so this movie is a gem in some very strong ways. And it also suffers in two even bigger ways for me that I think are really detracting, not the least of which is, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody. I figured it out, and I figured it out so easily and so effortlessly that the entire game of the movie was ruined for me. And I don't find Guy Ritchie movies or like Guy Ritchie mysteries to be terribly complicated. But what I do expect is that the action spectacle that he gives me, the thuggery that he presents for me is so dynamic and wonderful that I don't really care so much about the whodunit parts. And this movie, it didn't live up to that bar. And so I found I was way too focused on the fact that I already know how it's going to end. I mean, I called it from the moment the antagonist was introduced and how. Like, I feel like I put it all together and was flowcharting, and I'm not that smart. Like, it was, this is not about me.
That's right. You're usually knives in.
Right.
As far as mysteries go.
Tommy, I actually wrote, I haven't published my review yet, but that is a specific point I want to talk about. In an era of Knives In, does this movie live up? So,
right.
Sure. Well, that's interesting. And I think, I want to actually talk about the things that you knew, because I feel like, as in Knives Out, there's a lot to think that and one of the there were a couple big surprises for me, and then a couple of things that I felt like I knew too. So I think that that's kind of something that I want to talk about with this film. For me, it actually settled up a little bit for me. While I was watching, I didn't know how much I was enjoying it so much. I chuckled quite a bit. I laughed, and that isn't super common for me in movies. And I did really enjoy it. When I walked away, it settled up because I figured out that I really like the cast. And different from the vintage Guy Ritchie that I'm used to, I knew most of these people already, and I came in with a liking for them. So I liked watching what they did and what they did differently. So when I ended up flick charting it on my personal flick chart, it ended up winning a lot of things that I didn't expect it to win. And then what came over me was maybe that I really like what Tommy was talking about, Guy Ritchie's style. Going back to Man with Uncle, I think Man from Uncle is probably higher on my charts than everybody else.
Knives In, The Man with Uncle, whatever.
Yeah, all of those things.
So broken.
All of those movie titles, we know it. But anyway, so I'm going to start
Ferrari versus Fiat cars.
Sure. I'm going to try to run through a quick synopsis of the film here. It's different than all of the ones that I have read. This is what I took away from the movie, and it's because I'm eliminating some of the frames and trying to talk about the story. So quickly, just
do it in Cockney.
As if I could.
Okay.
Matthew McConaughey's Mickey was a brilliant but poor American whose grades bought his way to English University, where he quite quickly started using those wiles for illicit pharmaceutical gains. How do you say pharmaceutical in Cockney? I don't think I could do it. Okay. That sounds about right. Mickey built an empire through what one might even call proper politicking with the British gentry, alongside a willingness for brutal violence when he deemed the situation necessitated it. His reputation put him in a place for attack both from within his black market and from its outside as well. And he is scheming a mega deal to retire from it all with a fantastic egg to enjoy with his beloved wife. It all weaves together with a cast of caricatures that intermittently foil and foster his grand plan. Sounds like a Guy Ritchie movie, right?
Very well done.
Yes. Okay. See, that's what I was thinking too. So I want to start with this concept. Is this vintage Ritchie? Is this 2020 Ritchie going back to 2000 Ritchie? Is it tired or is it fresh? It sounds like we're aping on his style a little bit. We're liking some of the things you're doing, but we also get it. right? So Pete, you knew what you were seeing here. You knew it right away. You had a flow chart. So how did you feel about the style? Did it hit you okay? Is it bad or is it better?
No, and that's why it's easy for me to apologize for this movie, because I'm such a fan. And even though Jason Statham isn't around here and Vinnie Jones isn't around here, like it's fine. I'm with you. I know these guys. I know these faces. I love Eddie Marzan, and he's so gross in this movie. And so, like the style and tone are exactly what I've come to expect. And so, you know. Sherlock Holmes, for example, is a pretty bright guy, and you may think I'm going to totally follow what Sherlock is doing here, and then he starts calling his shots in bullet time, and you're like, okay, I'm done paying any attention. I've been swindled away into this fantasy land, and that's okay, because that's exactly what Guy Ritchie does. Like, that is his strength, his singular strength, and so I'm okay getting swept away a little bit.
For clarification's sake, you were saying Sherlock Holmes is a metaphor, not referring to the earlier Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes movie.
I was saying Sherlock Holmes, the Guy Ritchie movie, because he does. Remember, there's that calling his shots thing when he's punching. He's like,
I'm going to punch this guy in the face.
Okay.
Do this.
See, I thought you were referring to a character in this movie who was acting like Sherlock Holmes.
No. That was a metaphor, because I feel like all of his prior movies, I was not into King Arthur, and I was not into Aladdin, and I'm not into all of the other stuff that he's done since then. I haven't been as into, because this is, for me, this is who I know Guy Ritchie to be.
This is his bread and butter.
It's his bread and butter, and I think he's this. If we're going to look at him and at where his strengths are, that's great. And so I feel like he delivered on those points, even if I found them predictable. And I would say, in terms of criticism, there's a sort of lack of energy or intensity to this movie that I feel like the 20 years ago Guy Ritchie, had. And I don't know what that is. And I'm really curious if you guys share that. My hypothesis was that there's a bit of momentum lost moving back and forth between Fletcher's story time. And that I think was an interesting architecture that got tired for me pretty quickly.
Oh, no, that's what this whole movie's about, is about storytelling. You get that right from the beginning when he comes in. I mean, we start off Fletcher in the apartment, and he's got this story to tell of why they're going to pay him $20 million. And he even has the screenplay right there. He talks about the type of movie it's going to be. It's not going to be on a tiny screen. It's not, it's going to be more on grainy film stock, not this digital. It's all about him telling the story. So for me, that device worked. That's what this was about. It was about the storytelling, particularly the moments that I found very entertaining was he's telling the story. He's trying to sell this story, and there's points where he gets it wrong. So then he's got to backpedal and say, well, no, okay, let me tell that this is the way it is. So we get some scenes, his first attempt at what he guesses happens. Then he's told, no, that's not the way it went down. So then he goes back and retells that. And for me, it's all about storytelling.
But he only did that once, right?
Twice that I know of.
Oh, he did.
I believe he did twice.
And Steve, I want to say, and I've sort of buried my point on that one, because I think it may end up being controversial, and that is that I found the affectation that Hugh Grant brought to the character of Fletcher. That's what made it tiresome for me. I was exhausted by the Hugh Grant part of it after about 5 minutes of fun, and then I couldn't watch him. I couldn't listen to him. It was a real shortcoming, the film. And I know that's a controversial position, because everything I've been reading now that I've seen the film has really showered praise on what Hugh Grant brought. And I love the fact that they let him play with the character, that he came as doing something different. And I love that. I just think it was used in such a way that allowed me to get sort of exhausted by the back and forth and the way it worked. I want to absolutely agree with you, Steve. I think that the storytelling elements were some of the most fun. And when he was talking about aspect ratios and all of those things, they were doing some really fun things on screen that just I thought were fun.
Oh, sure. Then you reference the conversation and how you're going to do some lip reading. I mean, this is a movie about somebody that loves, well, a character at least.
Yeah.
Here that loves movies. We even get the meeting at Miramax with the Man from U.N.C.L.E. poster in the background. So a film that's very much aware of itself and what it's doing. So it was that self-awareness. For me, it was Guy Ritchie sort of dialing it back a little bit from the frenetic energy you might see in like Snatch and Lock, Stock. But for me, it really worked because it was not what we were getting was Fletcher's film. He was pitching his movie to us. And so it had some of those stylistic elements, but it wasn't Guy Ritchie. This was Fletcher's film that he's narrating to Ray.
Right. So is it Fletcher? Is this Guy Ritchie making a Tarantino version of Get Shorty?
Yeah, there may be something to be said to that a little bit.
That's an interesting way to think about that, possibly, yes.
Well, they could have had it if they'd opened the trunk and it was just glowing and they never show you that there's a dude in there.
Yeah.
I think there is potentially an argument to be made, and I'm sort of chasing this like a hound, but that some of that energy drain, if you want to call it an energy drain, the difference between some of his old is that he cast Matthew McConaughey as the lead.
Yes.
And Matthew McConaughey is so into the sort of slow, threatening class part of it that he kind of likes, that really, even when Jason Statham was his lead, like in Snatch and things like that, it was at a different level.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He was coming, he always had someone to barter with, whether it was Tommy in Snatch or I don't remember in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. But, there was just a little bit more rat-a-tat, and there wasn't as much with this. Whenever he was just sort of talking alone, he was talking about jungles and lions, and it was all a little bit self-satisfied and pretentious. So I think that's part of it, is that McConaughey took maybe the most obvious path, which is okay. It works, and you need to ground the movie somehow. But I think that when you go to him and he's that slow kind of draw thing, that might calm everything down quite a bit.
Well, for me, that's also the difference between something like Snatch, where you've got sort of a chaos to the story. There's chaos there, versus here where you've got McConaughey, as he tells us at the beginning, to be the king, you've got to act like the king. You've got to be in control of things. Whereas I'd say those earlier films is about characters that are in a world that's outside their control. This is very much about
control. Yes,
and
you're
very
exactly
much
right.
He's
on top already.
He's on top of everything. He's got power. He's got authority. He's got the money. He's in a position where he's got these relationships. So he's playing a big game. He's playing the long game, and he's got control. And I think that's
a really interesting point, because Lock, Stock, and Snatch are about, they center themselves around the people way down on the ladder.
Yes.
And usually the bad guy is the boss, is someone that needs to be toppled. That's interesting.
Which is interesting because, we get a number of references to Coppola in this movie and specifically to the conversation as he snuck it in between the Godfathers. This is Guy Ritchie's Godfather, right? I mean, this is the story of the king of the hill, right? The king of the mob.
Yes.
And we're going to see what happens when we put the Godfather in Guy Ritchie's universe and Guy Ritchie's cinematic universe, and see just how it unveils. And so, in that, much respect, I like it.
Well, see, and I like it too, because I like an ultimate protagonist. I like the protagonist who isn't threatened throughout the film, even though the film leads you to believe that he is, right? He's always in control. That's something that I enjoy in movies, having that sort of ultimate thing there. So if we look at this as organized crime, I mean, if this is The Godfather, does this, I don't want to compare it to that, but I really, and I brought it up in the intro a little bit, I really have a little bit of difficulty listening to the pressures that organized criminals are putting on each other, because it's so tangible in what's going on today in the world. It made me cringe a little bit while I was listening to them pressure each other in ways without saying the way that they were pressuring each other, because I felt like, oh, wait a second, this is actually real. It's not just art. And I don't know is this a change for me now in the way that I'm going to watch movies about the mob or about organized crime, because I'm a little bit unsettled at the way that things are happening in the world. How do you guys feel about that? Is there any sort of current events feeling that makes you feel differently? Because there are people that this is their genre. This is what they see. They like organized crime. They like watching crime on film. I don't know if maybe I'm changing the way I feel about that a little bit. Did it have that effect on you at all?
What can't he ruin? Not you, JJ.
Right. No, I know what you're saying.
I'm not going to say the name, but yeah. He's ruined a whole genre.
He shall not be named. Right.
Well, I think it as I thought about this was one that afterwards the story was there, but then I started to think about on my drive home, what's he trying to, what's the takeaway for me? What is the point that's being driven home, or what are we supposed to be learning from this character? Is it just pure entertainment? Is it fun? But there were enough pieces in here where I thought, is this sort of a different type of organized crime movie where we're looking at the businessman that is now in the position of power to really, he's bailing out these, the lords, these guys that have these huge estates, and he's buying fixing the roof for this guy. And it's about, for me, it's about how business has now come to dominate politics, and the power structure is flipped. And it's not, to me, it's not about necessarily crime, because as he says, he tries to, Mickey sets himself apart from, he's got what he does, but what he does doesn't kill people, right? He just makes money, and he's really good at that. He sees himself as an honest businessman. And what's interesting is there's even the possibility that down the road, when marijuana becomes legal, this is a legitimate business. So, but what I'm seeing Ritchie talk about is look at the power and influence that business has now in politics. And what does that do to things? And I think that's where I'm intrigued with what this film's saying.
I 100% agree with that. And for me, remember that one of the central themes of McConaughey's characters, right, the King of the Jungle line, is that it's only a crime until it's not, right? Until perceptions change. So you're buying a business that is absolutely criminal today, and in 3 years, you're going to be sitting on an absolutely legal gold mine because perceptions change. And I think that is probably the most interesting sort of thematic device at work throughout the movie. I mean, I think that's an interesting story that Ritchie brings.
Yeah, and that makes me question my own feelings about all of those things, right? I mean, because that's what we're faced with. We're faced with, no, this is not illegal. This is just the way we do business.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what the debate is today. I didn't do anything wrong. I was just doing a deal.
Right.
That's terribly uncomfortable for me.
Yes,
but
it
JJ,
is.
everything's different when you're dealing with the widow's weed of cheese time, or what did they keep calling pot? It was ridiculous.
Right. No, but then look at Colin Farrell's character, Coach.
Yeah.
Who's a guy a great character. And he's got these kids that he's trying to help out. He's got his gym. He's taking those kids off the street, trying to do something good for them, and gets pulled into this thing. And he's really effective at what he does, but he makes it really clear, I do not want to be part of this. This is not, I'm not in this. 3 strikes and I'm out. And he gets pulled in for a couple more, but he's like, I'm done. I'm not interested in being part of this. And there's something about the honor in his character that, was, I thought, really, really compelling to say he's not corrupted by the power and the money and all of that stuff. He's got his world of what he wants to do, and he's sticking to that.
Okay, and his group is called the Toddlers.
Every time I try to get out, they pull me back in. It's freaking Coppola again.
Yes.
So that is the save the cat from Matthew McConaughey and Charlie Hunnam for me, is his ability to see the goodness in Colin Farrell, not just throw him to the dogs and say, got it, you're going to have to do some stuff for us, but then we'll do it. Because the helping out the lords and ladies in these giant mansions is a really weird save the cat. That's like a Robin Hood for jerks. But
so this is a story point though, right? Because the Toddlers, this is one of the big wahoos at the end. The Toddlers call up after, Tommy, you give the 4 symbol, right? After, Colin Farrell, Coach says 3 strikes and I'm out. And then he ends up doing the 4th. He saves Charlie Hunnam from the Russians. And then the Toddlers call him.
Yeah, I get confused by this part a little bit.
The Toddlers, this is why I want to ask the question, because I want to see what you guys think. The Toddlers call him and they say, Coach, we're going to get you out of this problem that you have. And they're all showing up at the distribution center of the pot. And they see Mickey, they see Matthew McConaughey get in the car. They don't know that he's being threatened by the Russians. So the Toddlers, I think, are messing up, right? The Toddlers are intending to kill Mickey and all of his guys because they're trying to get Coach out of the obligation that he's given himself to Mickey and
they
Ray.
just missed?
Nope.
And they just are the toddlers. So they, of course, screw it up. Am I wrong? How am I wrong?
You missed something because when there's, and I'll have to go back and watch again, but there's a point where Coach says something where he says 3 strikes, I'm out, but we've only seen him do 2 things.
Yes.
He's helped them out 2 things. And I think the second thing is the toddlers taking out the Russians, that they set that one up of they were working this and say, okay, we've got to help him out because we know this is going to, and the fourth one was the 2 Russians that show up at Ray's place.
But if that's the case.
Yes.
Well, no, because the actual third one is what Coach does at Ray's place with Fletcher. Right. That's the actual third one.
Right. That's the third one.
If that's the case, if that's what the toddlers were doing, then how would they know as shooting just just everywhere into the car that they wouldn't kill Mickey?
That's what I
think they were trying to get Coach out of his obligation to Mickey and Ray because they're toddlers and they keep screwing things up.
I feel like I can totally see that. First of all, I can see how you could walk out with that. I also think that this could be an artifact of the way Ritchie plays with time and the way Ritchie plays with lateral structure, and so I'm okay going either way. The way I saw the film was the way Steve described it, but I can totally see.
Me too, I guess. But
the way you get it.
So then, a couple other story points then with some of the stuff. Was Dry Eye actually going to rape Mickey's wife?
Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's wow. That
not good, man.
But what a great role for Henry Golding.
Yeah.
He needed a role like this
in his young career to do something completely different. Because I actually really loved Crazy Rich Asians. We talked about this on our Decade show. I think it was a great film. So I was unclear about that because they didn't push it too far. So I wanted to ask that question too. And someone brought up, we were talking about all the cursing, how you got desensitized to the cursing, Pete. I actually never noticed it, which is really unfortunate to me.
Never noticed the cursing?
No, I didn't get overwhelmed by it. I think I expected it, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask Steve in particular, because we talk about language sometimes with these movies. Clearly, you didn't bring your daughters to this movie, but
no.
But
Steve, you love the C word, so
you did. Oh my gosh,
you're a legendary fan,
right? But Steve, was it what? I don't even want to use the word excessive because it's a lot, but did it bother you, and did it bother anyone else? I want to hear too.
No, because I think that's what I expect from Guy Ritchie, and that's the world his characters live in. So I'm used to that, and so it wasn't shocking or overwhelming or anything. It was, to me, it's that flavor of that world.
And the C word is legitimately different in English.
Yes, over there, yeah.
It's hugely different. It's just so much more. It does not have any of the weight that it has here.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It didn't bother me either. I didn't actually notice it until after the movie, and people started saying, "Oh, did you notice all the swearing?"
Yeah, I saw a little pre-roll or people talking about it ahead of time, so I was kind of gearing for it, and then I felt like, oh, it's a Guy Ritchie movie, like exactly what you guys are saying. It didn't seem different to me. Pete, you mentioned that we wanted to talk about the barbecue.
This is a little bit of a fact and tidbit. I mean, it's kind of a last bit, but I learned in watching an interview with Charlie Hunnam. He says they they played a clip. It was a talk show thing, and it's like Seth Meyers maybe anyway, and so they played a clip of the barbecue scene. He says, "Well, I've got a little Wagyu in the freezer. I've never had that." And then he touches it. Oh, it's hot. Yeah. So Hunnam says, "You know what, Ritchie? That's his design." Of that barbecue.
Oh, really?
He designed that. And in fact, it's so much his design that he is now making and selling these barbecues for purchase. I cannot find where you can buy them online. They're clearly not being mass marketed yet, but stay tuned, because you have to admit, like, the industrial design of the house of Charlie's character's house was really cool, and I really enjoyed it. I want to allow that to take us back to a character point, which I thought was just perfect for his character in particular. I think this is a maturing of Ritchie's writing, that he actually allows some of the emotional instability of this character to come up in conversation, not necessarily in demonstration. When we get to see, I don't want to set your OCD on fire, right? I don't want they start mentioning that his character is dealing with trauma and and they slow down long enough to let you actually ingest a little bit, I think, or at least for me, to ingest what his character was going through that leads him to be in this sort of protected state underneath McConaughey's character, and yet also continue to be a thug in his own unique kind of way. And I thought that balance was really nice, and I think more sophisticated than some of the characters that Ritchie has written for us in the past.
And Hunnam played it really well. Hunnam did some things where it's difficult to tell because there was the fake out, right? About everything that was going on versus what was not. I would need to watch it again to find out. But there were certain times when he was put under stress where he would have additional facial tics.
His eyes.
His eyes and different things that were going on. And I just think that's really... It's really a strong performance to lend itself to exactly what you're talking about, Pete. This sort of maturity of writing of a character with more depth. And I think so. I haven't seen a lot of Charlie Hunnam. I think he, and correct me if I'm wrong, he's Sons of Anarchy. Is that right?
Yes,
originally. Yeah.
So oh, wonderful. So I think it's really interesting to see him here and understand why so many people are in love with this guy, because he was really fun to watch do that character. I thought it was great.
He was also in King Arthur, Guy Ritchie's King Arthur. That's how they connected.
Do you guys have any other experience with Charlie Hunnam?
Oh yeah,
I met him through the British version of Queer as Folk.
There you go.
He plays. I'm not joking. He plays the younger guy that's adopted into the group in the British, which is where we got Queer as Folk.
That was the first one. That was before it. So that's a long time.
That was
ago,
I believe that was his start.
Cool.
Pacific Rim.
Yep.
Did you see Pacific Rim? Lost City of Z from a couple years ago.
Lost City of Z. I like that movie.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Well, and and my experience with him being so fresh, like it's the opposite with Matthew McConaughey. I think you guys talked about, right, like the sort of the slow intensity that you have in talking about The Lion. I initially, when I saw the early parts of this movie, I was like, I also connected it to The Wolf of Wall Street, and like, oh, he's going to start banging on his chest. Like there were so many elements that pulled from different places, but I actually liked it. I think his, and it might be just his performance, or it could be the script of this character. I'm not sure, but it did feel like a maturing for me. My experience of Lock, Stock, and Snatch in the end of the last century into the 2000s here was that it was clever, interesting, and fast, almost too fast for me. So this version of Guy Ritchie's style was actually, again, as it settled up for me, felt better. And a lot of that had to do with like these two characters, Charlie Hunnam and Matthew McConaughey, taking time with their roles and giving depth to the characters that I didn't experience in those earlier movies.
The camera also isn't as hyperactive.
Yes.
He's really has calmed down on that. So he's letting, like Pete and Steve were saying, of some of the character stuff come through actually dialogue and performance instead of the camera always consistently telling us what to feel. He had some acrobatics here and then, but he also, I have never seen Guy Ritchie set up so many sort of Wes Anderson long shots.
Interesting.
Of like the very beginning of the movie. It's a beautiful shot of the pub and that huge menu of all the weird British things.
Right.
And all of that stuff, we just stays on that for a while. Same with when Charlie Hunnam first goes into his house and there's that really long shot with all the symmetrical stuff. He really like settled the camera down and instead made the set really interesting and the lighting really interesting. Whereas I wonder if he didn't either have the patience or just needed the camera to be so crazy. It was neat. I liked it.
Now, Pete, you said you knew what was going on. Did you know that Mickey wasn't shot?
I knew
initially.
That.
Yeah,
you did.
How did you know?
Because
they didn't show the body.
Yeah, they didn't show it, and you can't kill Matthew McConaughey.
You can't kill Matthew McConaughey. Yeah, and that was
I totally thought they did, and then I thought they were just going to tell everything in arrears.
No,
and I was so happy that he didn't because I liked his character a lot.
Yeah,
but anyway, keep going.
Well, I mean, I think, there's some interesting places where they try to subvert expectations kind of obviously. And I think the fight porn is one of them that I thought, when we first meet the toddlers, they go in and they're a bunch of dopes and they're stealing weed and it's fine. And then the big British thugs, the bruisers come in and then they cut away real quick. And the second they cut away, I'm like, oh, well, that's because they're about to get their butts kicked by these young thugs, and it's gonna be great because they all have their cameras, and that's gonna be how they're gonna do this.
And these aren't the kids. Grime music.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But they allow us that. They already show us the coach at that point demonstrating his prowess on some other young Turks. And so they get their butts kicked by coach. And so we already were supposed to expect that the youths are early, but of course they're going to upset those expectations. And so I just feel like I saw that coming. But the real one was I've lost the character or the
Jeremy
actor.
Strong?
Jeremy Strong.
Oh, yes.
Bless him. So sweet. Does he have to come off of so obviously diabolical quite so early? Like the moment they're sitting at dinner, I don't even think the credits are done and they're having that conversation at dinner. I'm like, he's going to do bad things. And it just, every single, like that means that every
all of
single
your
twist,
widow's stinky cheese will be mine.
Yes, right. And so when, I can't remember now I'm feeling like Tom right now where it's just vapor. The twisty scene where we're supposed to think it wasn't him, but it's so obvious it was him.
At the stadium when what's his name is taping them? No.
Maybe it was, God, there are so many of them when Dry Eye goes to his dad and they have their scene and they set up Dry Eye, I think, unfortunately in this regard, because he, again, called all of his shots so clearly that it was too easy to see around the next corner. I found that part frustrating.
One of the reasons that this movie, I think, evaporates is it pretends to be a super twisty thriller with all these twists and turns. It's actually very straightforward with a lot of noise. And then everyone is solved by people with seemingly endless resources who are able to always magically be exactly where they need to be at exactly the right time.
And
so that's why
like
it kind of, no, I enjoy it at the time, but then it goes away. There's no Ocean's 11. The whole time I was there's different ways, and Knives Out. There's different ways of actually having so much more depth of story or twists. This was, we're going from A to C, and then B got in the way. Like it's just not really that much.
I didn't think this was a twisty thriller, though. I don't think it was, because it was set straight. Again, it comes to how
it pretends to be twisty.
Because Fletcher's telling us straight up. He's like, "Look, this is the deal. I'm telling you, this is what's going on," and then we see things play out. For me, the biggest shoe to drop that I was waiting to see what was going to happen was way back when kid gets pushed out the window, and then it's like, okay, we've got a kid that's probably at a prep school and his parents have power and money. So who's that going to be? And I kept waiting for that to come back. Where was that going to show up? Because I knew it was going to play into the end somewhere. I didn't know how. So that's where I was waiting to see that, which side that was, how that was going to twist. Because I know what's going to happen. I know we've got Matthew and Mickey, and it's like, okay, this unknown third party, which side do they come on? How do they upset the balance? And how do things get corrected at the end? That's what sort of kept me on my toes, because everything else with the whole plot, I know as soon as he starts to sell his company, yes, things are going to blow up, but I'm all for that. When the place gets robbed, right? When they find out,
by the toddlers?
I don't. Again, like
who's behind it, because we've only seen one character
behind it. There's only one bad guy behind it. I'm with Tom. I think, Steve, you might be giving this a little bit too much credit. It pretends to be twisty in ways that it does not earn. So I really think so, and I think this is a great time to at least talk about the era of Knives Out. Like, I feel like that. Looking at that movie next to this movie is a great sort of lesson plan for twistiness, that Knives Out has said, you know what? We know that you're going to be able to pick apart the what happened. We know you're going to be able to do that. So we're just going to tell you. Let's go ahead and get that out of the way.
I remember that part of the movie of Knives Out. I was like, do they know that I'm here right now?
Is this like
they just sort of solved the murder? What's happening?
Right? And so the upshot of that is we're going to spend the next 50 minutes and we're going to keep you riveted to your chair, if you are one like me who was riveted to his chair, in the why. And those motivations and the diabolical sort of space that exists between the motivations of these characters, even if you know that who they're going to make the bad guy because he was superhero,
Right.
It's going to feel rewarding because they're giving you substance to it. And I think that, to Tommy's point, maybe another reason why I feel like it's vapor, that this felt like substanceless on a number of levels that I felt like I was carrying some water for.
Well, I think Knives Out is a modern Agatha Christie novel, and this is a modern Guy Ritchie movie.
Yes.
I think
that metaphor was a modern Guy Ritchie movie,
right? Exactly. So, I mean, I think it comes down to whether this is something you're looking for, and I think that some people are going to enjoy that. But I think you're right. I think Knives Out shows a lot more depth and a lot more pathway in terms of the way it's telling a story. It's a new, interesting way to tell it. This is not that, but it is again, it's that sort of, I guess, vintage Guy Ritchie is the kind of the way to look at it.
I guess I'll just say, I think, yes, Rian Johnson set out to do a new twist on the whodunit. I think what Guy Ritchie did was, I'm going to tell my, gangster story, and I'm going to use some tropes from these types of stories. I don't think he set out to try to trick us. Because it's all so predictable. I think he's aware of that. I think he's using those as storytelling devices. It is obvious and it's clear and you can track it, because I'm not trying to second guess things. If I did, then I would have been wondering if Ray was the one that was secretly the puppet master behind everything, and that would have been, a surprise twist that we would have gone with. And I think it was just more, I'm using these common plot conventions within my sort of British gangster world to create a story that's differently structured. So that's where I'm coming down on it.
I'm not comfortable comparing it to Knives Out, but I am comfortable comparing it to Snatch, which was so much twistier. It had the same rhythm as this, but I didn't ever know where Snatch was going, and I always knew where this was going. I think
also,
that's part of the
only about 60% of Snatch was actually audible, so
yes,
discernible.
Sorry, JJ. Michelle Dockery.
That's a part of it. Well,
yes.
I wanted to talk about some of the other actors here. Michelle Dockery, it was not someone who had seen her in her TV stuff or earlier at work as well. So I had actually mistaken her because I really liked her accent that she used here. And it reminded me so much of my Natalie from Love Actually that I was thinking that, oh my gosh, what happened to this woman? She looks so different now. But as a result of that, I actually really liked her character. And I loved all of the, part of what I like about Guy Ritchie is the novelty and the different things they bring in. This character had a lot of interesting things to her character that you could maybe dismiss as novelty because they didn't have to do with the story, in that she was this ball buster who had a body shop that was almost completely run by women. And she had this interesting and powerful relationship with her husband, Mickey. I thought she was great, and I loved her performance of this character.
I liked her too. I got uncomfortable in that she was the only real female character, and there's a way of saying that he just wrote another man.
Oh,
meaning she's just as tough as everybody is. Maybe that's I don't mean to walk into something.
See, I saw her more as a Lady Macbeth type character who's,
well, I'm not smart.
I mean, that's the first thing that came to my mind. Of you've got a powerful woman who's right alongside guiding him through this, because she's the one that says, look, you've got to be careful. Everybody's going to be coming after you. She's the one that's the sharp business minded.
When there was someone in the room with her, I thought she was going to be the bad guy. The thing that you said you weren't wondering about Charlie Hunnam, I was wondering about Roz, because she had such a control over Mickey.
Yeah. All right.
I don't know.
I don't know. I struggle with that, Tom, and I think we've had this conversation. Part of it is that it's so easy for me to buy into that perspective. And the other part of it is, as soon as you hang that particular flag, it becomes impossible to write a strong female character.
Right.
Because you can say it about all of them, right?
Yeah.
Oh, they're all just men written so they swear more and are bosses. But really, that's unfair. And I think for me,
you're right.
it's I actually really enjoyed the way she played it, and I feel like I liked the agency that they gave her, that she was busy doing other stuff, like running her own business. Like,
Right.
I don't have time for this. Figure it out, honey. And then we get the brilliant moment where she gets to execute on the paperweight gag, which I actually thought that was really well set up. And the fact that they were just little tiny bullet holes in their heads was a laugh out loud kind of a scene, leading up to something that could have been potentially really horrific. But I would say her performance of that potentially really horrific, that rape sequence when she says, "Hello, honey," the way her face kind of lets go. I think the way she played it is such that, I live in a criminal environment, and this, unfortunately, criminals do incredibly horrible things to one another. Like I didn't get the feeling that she was taking it as as something more maybe than just like, you're going to do this to me and you will also get your comeuppance. And consequences were everything in this movie.
Yeah, for sure. Pete, you mentioned that Hugh Grant kind of wore on you for a while there. I actually bought into him pretty early. I thought the accent was different than I had heard him do before that I know of. And I liked it. I kind of was along for the ride with his character because, I didn't see him as Hugh Grant. I kind of let him go, which I think that this is Hugh Grant working with Guy Ritchie, right? Because in The Man from U.N.C.L.E., he did a somewhat departure from what he's usually doing in his romantic comedy world too. So I liked it. How did it sit with you guys? How was Fletcher particularly awkward and creepy for you?
I thought he was a lot of fun. I was a little uncomfortable with some of the maybe homosexual references being used as sort of a laugh line. But I thought he was really interesting. I thought he was neat, and he had some really funny parts. And he was also one of the two characters that got to say double bubble.
Well, it's the case of the Hugh Grant that we've all grown up with, which is like Hugh Grant as Hugh Grant versus Hugh Grant doing something different. So you get the sense of the actor that's there, that this is a different character. And so you don't see that a lot, because you can pick any Hugh Grant romantic comedy and you're like, these are all the same guy. Whereas now this is somebody completely different. And so for me, it was refreshing, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Colin Farrell was the same way. Colin Farrell was completely different, wasn't he?
He's a lot of fun. Yeah.
I thought he was great in this.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
He's a utility. Like they built up and I'll say Colin Farrell, but it really is Colin Farrell and the toddlers, right? I mean, when you look at their function in the movie, they function as a unit, and they're going to solve narrative problems to allow us to move smoothly to another sequence. And you're going to think that we're trapped, but thank God we have this all-purpose multi-tool that is kung fu fight porn, and it will solve all of the world's problems. And I thought that was, I feel like that's an element that I can fatigue on pretty quickly. And I thought it was used well, albeit they didn't turn up the sort of amplitude or excess of this particular tool. And I think maybe I wanted a little bit more violence. Maybe I wanted a little bit more sort of expansive grotesquerie of their fight porn, and I felt like he sort of turned it down from some other some past movies.
Well, they did actually record the rap, and it was in the ending credits.
Yes, and that song stuck in my head on the drive home, and I can't find it online. I'm dying to get that song.
It's out there somewhere. Pete, you mentioned the sleaze of Eddie Marzan. He was.
Are we talking about the pig? Is that what we're talking about?
Oh my gosh! Is that what you're talking about, Pete?
I don't know when.
That was okay. We have to talk about this. First, Eddie Marzan as the sleazy publisher, right? And so in a Guy Ritchie movie, of course, this is okay. We're going to make everybody terrible. Even in this case, the guy who has the keys to the castle for setting right the world, right? If we just publish this thing, we could topple a massive criminal industry. But no, we're going to put that guy and we're going to make him gross. He's
tabloid.
He's so tabloid,
yes.
Right? He's picking his butt in meetings. He's just generally a gross guy. And then, of course, like they peak Eddie Marzan. He wakes up. He's covered in dirt in the back of a van. They have recorded him having relations with a giant pig. And
what drug could that possibly have been? That's not the widow's cheese.
But I want to talk. But I think
Yes.
it's really important to note that this is the second, and I feel like we need to do some sort of a series or a grand study on the British affection with pigs and
Because of
sex.
Black Mirror.
Black Mirror. Oh my
Yes.
God, I can't get that out of my
Yep.
head. I felt like this was
Four Weddings and a
this is
Funeral. I didn't actually finish it, but I heard.
Downton Abbey. Am I right? So I feel like that was a really it was fantastic, but the payoff was I think Colin Farrell showing the video to Charlie Hunnam and just the way he played that. I can't ever get that out of my head. I've got to live with that. I've got to live with that forever. This can't be unseen. That whole sequence was brilliant.
Yeah, I think that is, and I think you harken back into this person that we would think could be the quote unquote good guy in this being the sleaze. That's the thing that makes me a little tricky with this. This is this organized crime, this glorification of organized crime. Like, who is our protagonist? Is the mastermind of a criminal enterprise.
Yep.
So
but his intentions are good. He was trying to reinvent
criminal.
It's about morals now. It's like I say, Coach has his code of ethics that he sticks to, and he's an honorable man, and Mickey's got the way he operates his business, and he has justified it in certain ways. But that is, I think, one of the pieces of the story is people that have a code and that defines their behavior, and then they stick to it. And it is right and just, even though it may be misaligned with legal matters. At least you know what to expect. His whole organization, he and Ray, they operate as a business, and they are presented as good, honorable men that make
honor
right
among
decisions.
thieves. Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
right,
Yes.
and I think that now what you're explaining here is an explanation to me for the reason why I don't understand why our country is so polarized right now. And it's because some people believe the message. It's honor among thieves. If I can get what I want from the big person at the top, does it really matter what they did to get there?
No, but look at what Mickey's doing.
Like,
Why
ends
is
justify the means kind of thing?
Well, but what is Mickey's end? It's not about having all the money and all the power. And this is the thing. When we look at Eddie Marsan as why is he such a despicable person? Why is he to take Mickey down? Because Mickey basically insulted him. And so now it's a personal thing. Whereas Mickey's objectives are, I want to sell all this so I can go and spend time with my wife. That's his ultimate goal. It's not about I'm power hungry and I have all this. He wants to live a normal life. And so this is where it's not
he's
about
going to sell
justifying things
at a discount to get there.
at a discount. Right. So it's not about, ends justify
Ruthless
the means
ambition.
and all of that.
Right.
It's what is the end result? Not a corrupted end. It's an honorable end that he is striving for versus the other characters where it's about greed and selfishness. His is a little bit, I'd say, not necessarily selfish because it's about doing something for his wife. Right. So it's not about I'm doing this because I want. It's I have a desire for a more relaxed lifestyle, which who wouldn't want?
And he gave that guy a roof.
Yes.
Totally gave that guy a roof. Guys.
Save the cat.
Who's a lord?
So
he really needs help.
He gave that lord a
does.
roof. Yeah, sell one of the Renaissance paintings behind you, you old creep. I don't understand London.
Okay.
But I think JJ in this country, it's America is very much about what do I get? It's always about me. What do I want? What do I get? I don't care about anybody else. This is right for me.
And if you buy into the perception of what someone is selling you, you are tending to look away from the other discretions of their past. And that's something that's really difficult about our society right now. And when we talk about purity tests and things like that, it's really difficult. And that's why in watching this movie, the organized crime thing hit me in a different way. And I don't want it to. I want to just have this be the evaporative fun that Tommy's talking about here in the Guy Ritchie style. And I really hope that other movies don't do that to me.
Nope.
You've been broken.
No, I will always say if somebody's taking the time to do something, there's something that they want to say with it. I will always say there's always Guy Ritchie has something. Look at what it may not be totally conscious, because this is the other thing with, I think, great art. there are pieces of the artist's subconscious that come through. And so the choices, the characters that he rewards, the characters that he punishes, he's making moral decisions and he's pushing out a certain perspective, point of view, and moral framework. So you can say it's just entertainment, but you dig deep enough, and I always say it's going to tell you something about what this person is saying is right in the world and what is wrong with the world.
Yeah, you may be right about that. Do you think that the toss away to the sequel towards the end is actually a possibility for this thing? Is Guy Ritchie leaving that door open?
No.
Isn't that, aren't they contractually obligated to always have a door or have an out now?
I'm sure they are.
I feel like
you can make up your own door these days, I feel like.
If he's going to do a sequel, we need another Man from U.N.C.L.E. That's what we need if he's going to do a sequel.
I don't disagree with you there. Yeah, and maybe we'll get another Bond intro reel. Like
Aladdin 2!
If there's nothing else that you guys want to say about this movie, I think maybe it's time that we rank it.
The gentleman scheme and plot full steam, so quickly you can't outflank it. So gentle then we should probably be as we begin now to rank it. Flick chart.
Beautiful.
Classy, right?
So classy.
Okay, bruv.
Yeah.
We've got all the movies we've talked about on this show ranked over at flickchart.com/TNR Film Board. Flickchart is a really cool site where you can create a tournament-style stack ranking of your movie preferences. So check it out and find out how your film favorites fare against ours.
Okay. I feel like this is actually a perfect first pairing. Where do you stand between The Gentleman and Kingsman, The Golden Circle?
Kingsman, The Golden Circle. My name's Tommy.
What? What?
Gentleman. For me, for sure.
Really? Do you remember that one?
Which
the
one
Golden
was
Circle's
that?
the second one.
Yeah, I liked it.
Oh, yeah. That's when our friendship started withering on the
Is that
vine.
what happened?
Oh,
Steve, where were you?
Tommy, I'm going to go with Gentleman.
All right, I'm Gentleman too.
Just throw
and how about The Gentleman versus Captain America Civil War?
Ooh, Civil War is the big battle royale at the airport. I think I got to take Civil War.
I'm going to say The Gentleman just to make Darnell angry.
Oh, what Tommy said about The Gentleman is how I sometimes feel about most of the Marvel movies, is that it's just afterwards. You have a great time, but afterwards there's not as much substance there.
Thanos
so I'm going to go with The Gentleman.
Do
we have a tie?
Pete?
We do. I'm Civil War.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pete and Steve, can you guys do Rochambeau on that?
I can try.
Not going to end well. My streak is fully broken. Okay.
How do we do this?
I'm gonna
just keep going.
I'm gonna count, and if it's the same, we just keep going. We don't count again, right? Ready?
If Pete loses, then the winner is 2001.
Shut up.
Yes. Yes.
And 1, 2, 3.
Scissors. Paper.
Rock.
Scissors. Ugh. All
okay,
right.
Civil War wins.
Pete.
That was a nightmare.
Yes.
But I gotta win.
Yeah, hold on.
All right. How about, The Gentleman or Demolition?
The Gentleman.
What?
Yeah.
You guys are full of surprises tonight.
Settle up for me.
Yeah, The Gentleman.
I need to see Demolition. I think I'm going to say, I certainly felt stronger at the time about Demolition. So I'm going to say Demolition.
I am also Demolition.
Okay, Tommy and me, we'll try this. Okay, ready?
Yep.
1, 2, 3.
Paper.
Rock. Tommy. So Demolition takes it.
All right. How about The Gentleman or Now You See Me? The first one.
Now You See Me. I unapologetically like both of those movies. And I unapologetically own both of those movies. And I keep saying the word unapology. And that's not right.
I'm going to take The Gentleman.
I'm taking The Gentleman.
I'm taking Now You See Me.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Wait, that's.
I think it's me and JJ then.
Okay, great.
Yes.
You lead, Pete.
1, 2, 3. Paper.
Rock. Okay.
Pete.
Now You See Me goes again.
Wow.
All right.
I want to play Pete's lottery.
The Gentleman has just lost every Rochambeau, so the fate is
Yeah.
not doing it well. What's next, Pete?
This is about as twisty as the movie.
You know I despise Rochambeau.
But do you know if Steve liked Looper? The Gentleman or Looper.
Steve don't like Looper.
Don't like Looper. The Gentleman.
Or Looper? Looper.
Looper.
The Gentleman.
This is a row.
And
off.
Steve is picking The Gentleman?
I'm picking The Gentleman, yes.
Okay.
'Cause Steve don't like Looper.
Tommy and Steve, go.
Okay.
Ready?
Ready.
1, 2, 3.
Paper. Pete and I are unstoppable.
The Gentleman just won
like
again.
I've got that Martin Simpson, the good old reliable rock.
Yeah.
Nothing beats
Oh,
rock.
no, the Looper won that
The
one.
Looper won
The
that
Looper
one.
won that one.
Yeah.
Gosh, Gentleman's lost 4 in a row. Keep going.
Hold on a second. I chose the wrong one. Okay.
Oh, no, I did it right.
Undo, go
So
back.
Looper
Yes.
won that one.
Yeah.
How about The Gentleman versus Jurassic World?
The Gentleman.
The Gentleman.
Oh, no.
I know what Tommy's going to say.
I've got to say Jurassic World. Rawr.
Yeah.
Baby Stegosaurus for the win.
I stand relieved that Andy is not here because I am going to
Yes.
say The Gentleman.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Okay. How about that? The Gentleman is now number 40 on the TNR flick chart.
And the worst performing Paper, Rock, Scissors movie of all time.
No. 2001. 2001 is still a record, I think.
Well, it just lost 4 in a row. I don't know.
Yeah,
about
well-
that. That's pretty impressive. Okay, how did you feel about it stars wise? I'm a 3.5 and a like on that one.
Yes, I'm also 3.5 and a like.
If it's out of 5, I will say 2.5. Right down the middle.
The algorithm at flickchart.com says this should be a 2.5. This is a 55%. And so it should be a 2.5 star. I'm actually with JJ and Steve on this. I came out of it saying, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. Most of it worked well for me. And even though I felt like I figured it out and it's a pretender in the twisty twisties, it was still worth it to me to have seen it. I'm not going to hurry back to it. It's not my favorite of his, but it's 3.5 and a heart for me.
Well, hopefully Guy Ritchie listens to this show and he knows now to use twisty twisties as the next euphemism
Yes.
for pot in the sequel. Well, where do we go from here? Next month on the film board, we are going to try to see Guns Akimbo, which was a trailer pick from Pete right on the Saturday matinee a few months ago. It's got Daniel Radcliffe, and it looks like a wild Black Mirror gunfight movie. It's only in limited release in February, though, so we're going to make sure that it's in every city that we are in so we can try to make that work. That is the last week of February. February comes out February 28th. We can make that work. Pete, for the main show, the next reel, what are you guys doing? What series are you on right now?
Let me see here. So what have we just finished? We're actually just wrapping up this week the Colin Higgins series. Colin Higgins, writer director. So we if you've been listening along, we started with Harold and Maude, Silver Streak, Foul Play, 9 to 5 just went live last week, and this week, the day after tomorrow, as you hear this, we're going to be doing the Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. Burt Reynolds does sing, and so after that, though. Week after, this is big week. It's our Guilty Pleasure series.
Oh,
and so we're starting off with Hudson Hawk, followed up by Andy's more recent Guilty Pleasure, Life of the Party.
Nice.
And then just porn.
Oh, God.
So guilty.
We also had a special release in the feed just this week, didn't we, Pete?
We sure did. Actually,
a little bit?
It just dropped yesterday. It was a very special, a VSE, very special episode where we talked about Tommy's movie.
That's me. I directed
right.
a movie,
Yeah.
everybody.
You sure did.
The whole time. It's called, the full title is 30 Nights of Sex to Save Your Marriage. It is currently available for streaming on Prime Video or Tubi, Tubi, if you have that. And you can also get it on DVD at Amazon, Target, and Barnes & Noble, which is still a thing.
Which is awesome. My copy is going to be delivered the first week of February. I just got notified today, so I'm very
Hooray.
excited.
Oh.
Excellent.
I forgot to talk about it in our show open, but all you wonderful people out there in the world should come hang out with us on our Discord server at thenextreel.com. Let us know you want to hang out with us, and we gather there with our fun film folks and discuss lots of remarkable things from throughout the entertainment universe. There's also specific chats about all of our shows, so come join our gang and interact with us on the internet. That's where we will keep the conversation going, but for this one, say goodnight, Pete, right?
Good night, JJ.
See you later, Tommy Handsome.
Double bubble.
And one last word from Steve Sarmento.
Hondo.
At the next reel, when the movie ends, the conversation begins. Till next.